afternoon. I am Reverend Edward Thompson, President of NOAA. We greet and welcome all of you to NOAA's 2021 Annual Public Meeting. We welcome and thank our elected public officials speaking today, Mayor John Cooper, Judge Rachel Bell, Christian Buggs, Chair of the Metro School Board, and Council Lady Sandra Sepulveda, representing District 30. Other elected public officials will also be acknowledged later in our program. NOAA, Nashville Organized for Action and Hope, is a faith-based organization consisting of interfaith congregations of Jews, Christians, Muslims, and Unitarians. NOAA also has labor unions and community organizations. Currently, there are 62 organizations. NOAA is an affiliate of the National Community Organizing Group, the Camellia Foundation based in Chicago. NOAA's main goal is to train ordinary people to use their God-given power to bring about liberating policy changes of justice in our community. We are an advocate social justice group. We do not endorse candidates. Presently, NOAA has 4 task forces. They are affordable housing, criminal justice, economic equity and jobs, and education. NOAA issues center around these task forces. Today, these task forces will ask specific questions to our guest public elected officials. NOAA theme for today's annual public meeting is thriving, not just surviving in Nashville. There are too many in Nashville just getting by, some barely getting by, and others not getting by at all. We are seeking solutions for those who are only surviving but not thriving in Nashville. We want to transition those only surviving to a thriving way of life. Again, we welcome you.
Thank you, President Thompson. We will have opening prayers now from Executive Director of the American Muslim Advisory Council, Sabine Muad'Din, as well as from the Senior Servant of Metropolitan Interdenominational Church, Reverend Edwin Sanders.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, all praise and thanks belong to God, Lord and cherisher of the worlds, the compassionate, the merciful. God says in the Quran, and if you are grateful, I will increase you in favor. Oh my Lord, you command us to gratitude and you guarantee us that gratitude will bring more blessings. We have been blessed with many privileges, many blessings in our lives and in our city. But we know you are watching us to see how we use those blessings. Help us understand that gratitude is not simply to say thank you. Gratitude is an action. It's how we use and share our blessings with others. God says in the Quran, you shall not attain righteousness until you give out of what you love. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, commanded his companions, whenever you prepare broth, put plenty of water in it and give some of it to your neighbors. We love food on the table, a roof over our heads, the best education for our children, jobs that pay a living wage, an equitable justice system. Oh my Lord, you are the just, the bestower, the expander, the provider. Help us understand that by sharing what we love for ourselves, justice, resources, opportunities, and using them to uplift our neighbors, uplift those who have been left behind, that our blessings will increase. We will have more for everyone. Help us come together as city leaders and community members to create a community where each and every person, young and old, rich and poor, regardless of race, regardless of the zip code, regardless of their immigration status, is not only surviving, but thriving in Nashville. Amen.
Reverend Sanders.
Good and gracious God, As we come into your presence today, we come giving thanks, while at the same time asking for your help as we express our concerns for the disenfranchised persons in our communities who are the victims of the continued reality of being left out of the equation for success in the midst of evidence of so much abundance around us. Help us as we hear the voices of the power brokers who address us this day, not to be manipulated in ways that do not serve our best interests. Help us as we live in the shadows of the empire, not to be comfortable with the false sense of well-being, carrying the banner of justice while working within systems and institutions grounded in injustice. Touch our words, our thoughts, and our actions during this meeting, and free us from the temptation to overestimate who we are in relationship to who you would have us to be. We know you by many names. We know you as God who is the Lord and Savior of our lives. We know you as Allah. We know you as the Buddha. We know you by many names, but we know that you are one God, that you're a God of justice, that you're a God of peace, that you're a God of love, that you're a God who we can turn to in the midst of the madness of this world and know that when we do, you hear us and will respond to us in ways that go beyond our understanding. So we say thank you as we move forward in the midst of this time of fellowship one with another. In thy name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you both for opening our meeting today. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marley Albert. I'm the Vice Chair of NOAA and a proud union member of SEIU Local 205. We are excited that so many of you have chosen to join us this afternoon, and we appreciate and applaud your efforts in taking another virtual step in support of our social action efforts. This year, we have chosen as a theme the question, what does it take, what does it look like to thrive and not just survive in Nashville? Coming off of a quote from Maya Angelou. We believe that all of our sisters and brothers deserve to thrive in Nashville. The videos that you're going to see throughout the session today present people who are directly impacted by our city's growth and those who work with them. We will hear from some of the decision makers who can exert their power and influence in support of the NOAA issues we will spotlight today. We want to thank in advance Mayor Cooper, Council Lady Sandra Sepulveda, Judge Rachel Bell, and MNPS School Board Chair Christiane for joining us. Our task force issues of affordable housing, education, economic equity, and criminal justice are interwoven throughout today's session. You will hear questions related to each of those throughout different speakers, because we believe that these issues do not exist alone. We know that these issues intersect. That's where we all live. Nashville is interwoven in all of these issues, and so we will do that today. Next, Mike Hodge will present highlights of the past year.
This has been a busy year for NOAA. 1 year ago, we held our 2020 annual meeting with over 700 people, gaining commitments from Mayor Cooper, the police department, metro schools, and candidates for state legislature. In December, we held a public lamentation, making stars for those who had died of COVID and pushing for a state mask mandate and help for people who are facing eviction. 3 NOAA members worked hard on the Mayor's Task Force for Affordable Housing, which delivered 9 major recommendations to the mayor. NOAA met with and pressed the mayor and Metro Council to move our city toward a moral budget by adopting some of those housing recommendations and including special resources in schools to break the school to prison pipeline. We spoke out for changes in the police department and for truthful curriculum in schools. There's more, but this past year was a year for action and hope. Nashville organized for action and hope.
So I think Nashville thrives when the city welcomes immigrants and refugees, regardless of skin color, regardless of the faith they practice, welcoming anyone and everyone into this city.
It'll be a city where our Black and brown sisters and brothers can go and go to the park, go to school, feel safe. That's a thriving Nashville for me.
I feel like the most things I'm passionate about is probably educational equity, just because I think it shows that through our education system, racism is still very thick in our educational system.
Equality throughout the school system, every school, you know, getting equal monies so the children can thrive.
We want to make sure that people get what they need. If they have a healthcare issue, we want to make sure that they have a healthcare response whenever possible.
People like me, Black Americans, you know, Black young people and professionals, we need somewhere where we don't need to just survive, we need to thrive. You know, that means more Black businesses around historic Jefferson Street. That means looking at more business districts, more ownership of land, more ownership of our schools, and just being able to have a Nashville that works for all citizens, and us in particular, that have been historically slighted, to say the least.
If I could live here and raise my kids here, that'd be great. You know, keep all the power to all these buildings on. So, you know, I love Nashville.
So when we're talking about what does thriving look like in Nashville, it looks like officers who are trained to understand that if someone looks different from you, or if someone has a different hue than you, or a different belief than you, then you still treat them with dignity and respect.
For us, I think to thrive, I think we need to continue adding diversity to the bench. I think when we talk about diversity, we talk about putting women on the bench, people of color on the bench. I think it would thrive if we have different ages of people on the bench, people that come from different geographical locations, people who come from different socioeconomic differences. I just think it matters.
We don't have those economic egalitarian options given to people who've not had a hand up. And it can be different. We do not have to play to the sensibilities of the gentry. We can actually do a different job, which is to understand and know that we must share.
Thank you. Reverend Herbert Lester.
Good afternoon. My name is Herbert Lester, and I'm a member of Friends and serve on NOAA's Executive Committee as Chair of Personnel. This afternoon, I have the tremendous privilege of inviting you to link with NOAA. There is, just in case you have not seen it, a link in your chat box for donations at the bottom of your screen. With this link, you can invest in NOAA's fight for decent, affordable housing for all Nashvillians, in its struggle for restorative justice, social emotional learning, proper staffing with nurses and mental health counselors in our schools, and adequate funding of K-12 education in this state. When you link with NOAA, you invest with us in criminal justice reform, in job growth and economic development that benefits all of our people. In short, you invest in building power. We believe that organized people and organized money generate the power needed for meaningful and just social justice reform. And further, the power is so good, everybody ought to have some. You have the power right now to invest in NOAA's anti-racism work, in its integrated voter education team, and all of its other issue teams. Won't you take a minute and link with NOAA? Use the link in your chat to invest right now in building power. Invest in the power to create justice, to garner the capacity to act in the best interest of all Nashvillians. Won't you link with us this afternoon? Power is so good. Let's make sure everybody who needs some has some.
Good afternoon. My name is Liza Ramage, and I'm chair of the Education Task Force of NOAA. For many years, one focus of the Education Task Force has been to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. The tools to accomplish this goal are social emotional learning and restorative practices in every school. We celebrate this year that the mayor and council supported social emotional learning and restorative practice policies by including funding in the Metro budget for these programs. MNPS is currently implementing advocacy centers with advocacy coaches in all 72 elementary schools. This is a win for Nashville's children. Restorative practice assistants in each middle and high school are expected to be in place in the 22-23 school year. Again, we want to acknowledge the progress our city has made. However, we want to keep our eyes focused on even more positive and equitable outcomes for MNPS students, to identify steps that will lead us from this current foundation to increased opportunities for our students to succeed and to thrive. Thank you.
When I went to Hillsborough High School, I was in the IBCP program, and I feel like that was kind of more so targeted and promoted towards the white students at Hillsborough, where students were in the honor classes, and the students in Business Academy or Global Health and Science didn't really get that pass-on information about this program. I feel like it was very dense and very limited how much they spoke to us about it, how many flyers were passed out about it, and then also just capturing the students' attention and communicating with them in a way that they would see it's also a benefit and help towards their college. There were a lot of students when I did like our first day of junior year, people are seeing my schedule and they're like, what are these classes, pointing out my IB classes. And I was like, oh, explaining the program to them, what it was about. And they're like, I never heard about this. I didn't know about this at all. And so through that time span also, I've had a lot of classmates drop out of the program because they didn't feel supported. They didn't feel heard. They didn't feel like each class was benefiting them and teaching them about their history and their education as well. And so it was just kind of stuck in a bubble of maybe World War II, different type of biologies that just weren't expansive enough to each and every student in that class that were also Black and brown students. I feel like thriving equity in Nashville would look more like, in the terms of education, having discussions and having panels with parents and their students coming together every time there's a parent-teacher conference, highlighting this program as well, and also making the necessary steps to give the correct support to each student. When a student feels like they're overwhelmed because of these family issues or these life issues, it's not, oh, well, let's try to find another way. It's more, how can we help you?
Hello, my name is Robert Taylor, and I am currently a member at Word of Life Christian Center International on Clarksville Highway here in Nashville. I'm also a member of the Education Task Force of NOAA and the State Funding Subcommittee. The Education Task Force of NOAA knows that racial disparities continue to exist in Metro Nashville public schools. Black and brown students are overrepresented in punitive discipline consequences, and the same students are underrepresented in gifted and talented programs and in honors and advanced courses. NOAA's Education Task Force is committed to addressing and eliminating these disparities. In the recent past, there has been meaningful engagement between NOAA and Metro Nashville public school leaders around these issues with some positive outcomes. Partnership, however, does not suggest agreement on ways to resolve all issues, but it does require consistent engagement and honest, transparent communication. Our work continues to bring these issues of racial disparities within Metro Nashville Public Schools to the Nashville public. We are thankful that School Board Chair Christian Buggs agreed to meet with us today to answer questions related to our schools. We also invited Director of Schools, Dr. Adrian Battle, who unfortunately wasn't able to attend and had to decline. So now we welcome School Board Chairwoman Buggs. Thank you for joining us. And I have a few questions for you, Chairwoman Buggs.
Sure, thank you.
All right. So my first question for you is, and these questions are pretty much yes or no answers, and then we'll give you time at the end to expound upon your responses then.
Yes.
But question one is, will you support and encourage Dr. Battle, Director of Schools, and her administrative team to engage regularly and in good faith with NOAA to reduce and eliminate the racial disparities in school discipline and advanced academics that have been identified in meetings with school board members?
Yes.
Great. All right, question number two. Will Metro Nashville Public Schools regularly provide ongoing, up-to-date data regarding these racial disparities in advanced academics and discipline to the public through the school system's open data portal?
Yes.
Great. All right, our third question for you today is, will Metro Nashville Public Schools, while Metro Nashville Public Schools has spoken about identifying and eliminating racial inequities in advanced academics, a concrete plan for doing so has not been presented. Will you support a board resolution on eliminating racial inequities in advanced academics to encourage the district to develop a powerful and meaningful action plan?
Yes.
Great. So thank you very much, Chairwoman Buggs. You will now have 4 minutes of your own for additional remarks regarding these questions.
Thank you. Hello, Nashville. I am Christian Buggs, Chair of the MNPS Board of Education, daughter of Nashville, lifelong member of Lee Chapel AME Church, a NOAA affiliate, and mother to my 3-year-old son, Christopher. I would like to start by saying thank you to NOAA for your consistent advocacy, support, and engagement. We appreciate you offering us this platform to speak to neighbors and cannot wait for next year's event where we will hopefully be in person. I also want to publicly thank Dr. Battle and her incredible staff of almost 11,000 employees, all of which, for all of the ways you continue to show up for students, their families, and then for each other. You have continued to navigate a multitude of issues while simultaneously trying to restructure a system that was not established to meet the diverse needs of 83,000 students. I want to thank my fellow board members for your leadership as we continue making tough decisions that we certainly did not expect to be in our job description. But maybe most importantly, again, thank you, Nashville. You parents, you caregivers, you supporters of any kind, and especially to our students for continuing to believe in while still pushing us. Please know MNPS is dedicated to curbing inequities of all kinds, but we need your help to do it. Schools are where community issues bubble up, so we ask that you continue to be both critical thought partners and honest stakeholders that recognize racism cannot be solved overnight or by any single entity. So bring us your ideas, bring us your critiques and suggestions, and bring us your non-biased heart so that has done work to reflect on and correct itself. We must address inequity in our daily actions and in policy. We must address these every single day because no program or single year's investment will right hundreds of years of inequities. You might be asking what our plans are, and admittedly, they are complex because the needs of our students and families are. So join us at board meetings the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month at our Bransford Avenue address. Call or email board members, all of whose contact information can be found on the MNPS website, or simply sign up to receive updates from both MNPS and your local public school. Doing so will keep you up to date and let you know where your advocacy efforts might be best placed. By taking these steps, you'll learn more about our partnership with Vanderbilt University, Anchor Down, that will produce actionable, innovative, and scalable research to address racial and social inequities across the city. You might also learn more about the advocacy centers that are being stood up in every single elementary school to better support social emotional development of all children and the elimination of suspensions, expulsions, or arrests of these youngest babies. You might also learn about the personalized student dashboard that is already in stage 1 of development. This tool, whether you call it a personalized data dashboard, open data portal, or anything else, allows us to better track individual student performance and will eventually be community facing for the entire city to see. If you're a caregiver of an MNPS student, you might consider joining our Parent Advisory Council that meets regularly. This is a great way to stay informed about district happenings and will help build relationships with other parents in your area. It has already been a great resource and support for me as I navigate being a pre-K mom. Whew, that's another sermon for another day. But if you're a neighbor with time to spare, you might also consider signing up with us at pencilforschools.org as a tutor. As you can see, there are lots of ways to plug in because there's lots of work to do. We know we're not quite where we want to be, but our city and our system are shifting to better support children. MNPS is not at all perfect, but we're fighting the uphill battle. So again, thank you for holding us accountable to do more and for advocating for our ability to do so. My thoughts and prayers continue to be with all of our families and with all of the children that we serve here. So to whatever God, or by whatever God you serve, God bless you.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Buggs. We appreciate that. As a Metro School parent, I want to hear that sermon later that you have. At this time, we would want to remind you all that in the chats, whenever we are speaking with an elected official, we will put the chat in the chat box that you can see it. And all of these questions and answers will be on our NOAA's website after this event is over as well. But if you follow along in the chat box, you'll be able to see the questions that we're asking. At this time, we are going to hear a reflection from Julie Greenberg. She is the Education Director at Congregation Micah.
Thank you all so much. It is truly an honor to be here with you today. And I come to you today both as a representative of the very diverse Jewish community here in Nashville, but also as a former public school, both middle school and high school teacher, and a proud MNPS parent of two, now one graduate. And this young man, because I want to teach you just a little bit of Hebrew today, but we wrote it in English so you can have a little easier time of it. B'Tselem Elohim is the phrase. And this is in Hebrew, the phrase we're all familiar with, being created in the image of God. And this is my son, who is now a 17-year-old senior at MLK. But I think what's interesting about that phrase in Hebrew, we're so used to thinking about, certainly the Jewish conception of God that many others inherit, is that God is one, right? That this is a singular God and this idea of unity. But Elohim in Hebrew is in a plural form. So I always invite my students, as they're learning Hebrew in 4th, 5th, and 6th grades, getting ready for their bar bat mitzvah, why do you think one of the many names for God, when we're talking about one God, would be in a plural form? And there's no right or wrong answer to that, but it challenges them to really think expansively about this idea. And if we are all equal in the eyes and in our creation, well, that God, this Elohim, would have to be really expansive as well, right? So I appreciate the efforts of NOAA to be inclusive of all of us, all of our students, and ahead of this gathering, I drafted a prayer for our community around this idea of us all being created in God's image, which I'll share with you now. Source of all being, creator of all life, may your goodness find its way into the hearts of all your children. May those who wield power do so with a balance of wisdom and justice and compassion. May those who feel powerless remember their intrinsic worth and also act with a balance of wisdom, integrity, and compassion. May we all feel called to action based on the injustices of racism and see ourselves not as enemies of one another, not in struggle with one another, but as human beings created in the image of God, connected to one another's well-being. May all of us come to acknowledge the racism that is pervasive in our city and our nation. May we commit to sitting down with one another, as we're doing today, in honest dialogue, opening our hearts in compassion to one another, bearing witness to the pain and fear of one another, even and especially if the other looks and seems so different from ourselves. May we commit to joining together in acts of justice that will bring about equality in education, economic opportunities, law enforcement, and judicial proceedings. May each of us come to understand that ultimately, my experience of freedom, justice, and peace is inextricably linked to the freedom, justice, and peace of every other person in our country and city and our world. May we open our eyes to the invisible lines of connection that unite us, and with clarity of vision, continue to work with NOAA for a world where every person's life is valued, cherished, and loved. Amen.
Good afternoon. My name is Vonda McDaniel, and I am a product of Metro Nashville Public Schools. Always proud to say that. NOAA understands that changes to our public education system are only wishes unless they are fully planned for and fully funded. And funding our public schools happens through the Metropolitan City Council and the mayor's office. The MNPS school board then determines how those funds are allocated. Last year, NOAA advocated for pay raises for teachers. Thank you to Mayor Cooper and the council for making our teachers the second highest paid in the state of Tennessee. This year, we are working with leaders at MNPS to conduct a pay plan study for the support employees that provide important infrastructure like food service, front office staff, and one-on-one paraprofessionals. We need to ensure that these employees are fairly compensated as well, so we can continue to meet the needs of our students. Our next question is for Mayor Cooper. Will you fully fund the support staff pay plan once it is studied and passed by the school board?
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's great to spend time together on one of the most beautiful afternoons of the year. And I always want to start out by thanking Chair Buggs and Superintendent Battle for their leadership. And before we get started, let's just spend a moment. I want to call attention to the BEP revision process that Governor Lee has opened up, which may be in response to our lawsuit. And I want to urge NOAA to follow it closely and help advocate for Nashville's fair share in this process. The City Council, it's been our privilege to really increase the level of funding, particularly from a local community, but the state's share of funding, which is very important to school systems, has stayed flat to down. And being able to correct that, hopefully will provide more resources to be used for better outcomes going forward. So it's always a challenge to get the right or more resources for our school system. And let's start with our last year's budget, which for the first time in years, a generation really, fully funded the school board's request. That's kind of a revolutionary condition to be in that. And all told, this year's budget included $81 million additional dollars for education. And that's the largest ever new investment in education. And included in that budget, there were important steps on salaries and benefits for MNPS support staff. There is a $2.7 million step increase, a $3.2 million for 2% COLA increase, $3 million to hire advocacy coaches in support of social and emotional SEL learning, $2.4 million for our nutrition service employee salaries, plus additional benefits, including insurance, pension, more professional days that altogether represented a $14.8 million investment. And then on teacher pay, the average salary for teachers has now increased by $7,000. That means teachers who have 8 to 10 years experience have seen an increase of about $10,000. And teachers have told us that they can now quit their second jobs. Now, this is long overdue in our city, and the Education Foundation tells me that our teachers are now the best paid in Tennessee. That's their work. I'm always concerned to make sure that's right, because I think we all feel that way, that we want our teachers to be the best paid in Tennessee. And that took a lot of work, study, careful planning to get there, with a study by the Nashville Public Education Foundation. But that's our goal. And we have work always to examine compensation for schools and school support staff. But what we know how to get that done is to have a study. I know in the past, we've had a study and people said, oh, well, another plan, nothing will change. But then things did change. We had a delay due to the health crisis for a year in doing that. But we followed through with a historic commitment for education. And I hope with success also from the state being fairer in its BEP funding, that the Chair Buggs and Dr. Battle will have even more resources next year to create better outcomes for students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper. I did want to just make sure that I'm clear. We know that there are many issues in school funding, but our specific question was about support staff pay plan funding and around whether you would support that. So I thought I heard that in your response, but I just want to make sure.
Heard from me every known encouragement other than I can't support a plan I haven't seen or that the school board has not passed. But is this a priority for us? Of course it is. We've been putting our money behind this priority and really building a great school system to serve all of our children in the years ahead. Nothing is more important in Nashville.
Thank you.
So I look forward to reading the plan so that I can support it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper. We have many more questions to come and we're trying to get all of this in, and we know that there's a lot of information. At this time, we also want to thank those elected officials. If we were in person next year, y'all, when we are in person, we will get to see you and thank you in person. At this point, we know there are some that have joined us, so I wanted to thank them for spending their Sunday afternoon. We know so far we have Judges Anna Escobar and Judges Claudia Bonneman has joined us, as well as School District 9, Abigail Tyler is also with us. So we're thankful for those who've joined us. And if you are other elected officials that have come in and we haven't seen you in their list of about 400 people that are here and on Facebook, feel free to jump in the chat and I'm happy to announce that as well. We are not trying to overlook anyone. We know that time matters and you're giving us your time this afternoon. Next, we'll hear a video from Attorney Cheryl Gwynn.
As a person comes through the legal system, then there are laws that have been passed that sometimes judges do not even have any discretion over. So some of those laws, such as there is a school zone law. If you're within 1,000 feet of a school with a certain amount of an illegal substance, then there is an automatic amount of time that you are required to serve in prison. And that doesn't matter if this is your very first arrest and your very first encounter with the legal system, but it is imparted emphatically. So yes, changing laws, whereas judicial discretion is still an option, is extremely significant. Then we have also judges that are being elected to their positions and understanding their power as well, because it is, I think it's almost a given for people that are in a minority position to understand that they are treated differently when they come before the court. And that's not just by officers, it's not just by the DA, it's also by the judges. Judges, when they have an opportunity to express their discretion, sometimes they are implicitly unfair, which is scary because they have they also have a significant amount of power when a person is coming before them to determine how much time, whether that person can be violated on their probation, whether that person has to serve time for incarceration, whether that the amount of the sentence. When you're looking at all of those things, and then they also have the authority of whether to send someone to death, to sentence someone to death. That's huge. That means that they can actually choose to end someone's life. There is a bias in Nashville. There is a bias based upon color of a person's skin, as well as their educational status, economic status. Recognize those biases that exist. Understand where those biases are coming from, and then eradicate that bias. That's the only way that Nashville is going to be thriving. Other than that, we will continue to have this significant divide that is absolutely jarring, and it's going to be reflected in our economic development. It's going to be reflected in our criminal justice system, and it's also going to be reflected in our education.
My name is Bennett, and I am a member of the Criminal Justice Task Force. In May 2022, Nashville will hold primary elections in which many of the general sessions and criminal court elections will be decided. These judges are elected to terms of 8 years. Other than the election time, there is little oversight over them. Because of the concerns we have about the criminal justice system and mass incarceration, it is very important that we elect general sessions and criminal court judges who reflect our interests and concerns. The Criminal Justice Task Force has created a survey that focuses on general sessions and criminal court judges because of the direct and significant impact they have on those who are arrested and processed through our criminal court system. The survey will be available in the chat, online, and on paper for you to complete. Your responses to the survey will inform NOAA's efforts to educate you about the candidates for these positions, so when you go to the polls next May, you will know who to vote for. The challenge we pose to you today is to complete the survey and to recruit others to complete the survey. Working together, we can make our courts instruments which dismantle the burdens of mass incarceration. In the chat is the link to that survey. We ask you to save it on your browser or copy the link so you can complete the survey after our annual meeting today. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I am Paulette Coleman, a member of Lee Chapel AME Church and a member of the Affordable Housing Task Force of NOAA. Nashvillians really want to be engaged in shaping the future of our city. Just as you have heard about the citizen survey that was presented, in order for our citizens to do more than survive, but to really thrive, we must tackle our city's housing affordability challenges. The need for affordable housing is enormous, and it hits everyone across all socioeconomic, educational, all spectrum. It is a challenge that we must face, and it also impacts all workers at every level, government, teachers, firefighters, and the like. We will hear from one of those impacted, and most importantly, it affects the unhoused and those on long waiting lists for subsidized housing. Mr. Darrell Rose will speak now in a video.
I came here in November from Chattanooga, and I'd gotten into some black mold there, was hospitalized, pretty rough stuff. And then when I came back, I came down with pneumonia. So I've been in the hospital like 4 times in the last 2 years. And then I've just, you know, kind of bounced from where it seemed like a convenient place to be and good for me. And then a friend of mine moved in here, and he told me about it, told me I could come meet with Caleb on Wednesday, and then I was approved the next following Wednesday when I came back to church, and so I moved in, and that was about 8 months ago. I actually built I've got a tent, and I've added a cover to it, and got a porch. It's a pretty cool setup. I'm comfortable. Just kudos to them for doing it. I mean, it's a blessing to have somebody there willing to help you when you need help, and just nothing but good things to say about it.
Thank you. We know that residents being involved works. A year ago, Mayor Cooper made a commitment to NOAA that he would form an affordable housing task force to bring specific recommendations, and that NOAA leaders would be included. The mayor followed through on that commitment, and we thank you. The task force worked for more than 5 months and issued a report with specific action state. It was one of the most comprehensive convening of people on the affordable housing issue that I have seen. The current Metro budget reflects 3 of these actions that have been taken by the mayor and council through NOAA's work and support, totaling more than $33 million. We must continue to move forward, and the recommendations in the report, and we need to keep going. We are not thriving yet. These questions are for Mayor Cooper. They will require a simple answer. Mayor Cooper, will you be willing to reassemble people from the task force and others, including NOAA representatives, by January 31st, 2022, to achieve the following objectives by May 2022? First, would you work to find dedicated and recurring funding streams of at least $30 million directed toward the Barnes Fund? May we get a yes or no answer, please?
Well, thank you, Dr. Coleman, and the work of the task force. Of course, funding the Barnes Fund is one of our highest priorities. So we are actively working to do that, yes.
Thank you. The second part of the question is, in addition, would you also work with key Metro departments to identify and set aside public properties for affordable housing use?
Well, yes, indeed, this is a goal of all of us. And I want to call out, so let me answer to the affirmative there.
Thank you.
Your help in finding, I think, an important thing to focus on for this community is the addition of Dr. Troy White, our new MDHA leader, who's an outstanding leader and living in public housing. And I think he's going to be a great leader for the city going forward. And my commitment to the Barnes Fund in Nashville more than doubled its funding from last year. We've increased with 25% from the general taxpayer share, and then $10 million in ARP money going to the fund. And the Barnes is a great tool. It's central to our strategy. We're all committed to it. The Housing Trust Fund Commission just is opened their fall application round this week, and it will make a first round of grant decisions in December. But we can't rely just on that tool for these critical housing needs. There are 3 new tools I think it's good to go over with this group. One tool is the $10 million Catalyst Fund, which is going to the ARP committee for approval in December. This Catalyst Fund is going to allow us to move quickly to preserve affordable units that can be lost in current market conditions, being in danger from development. We're also adding $2 million for an infrastructure agreement program to help make affordable development more feasible. This is a tool that had been previously reserved for large economic development incentives, and now we're pivoting and deploying a participation agreement for affordable housing for the first time, much needed. And we're starting up a tax incentive program for mixed income developments, and we're working with Councilwoman Berkeley Allen, who's also the budget chair on legislation on this. And then I'm hiring a director of housing, as well as a housing data analyst, and $500,000 has been carved out to fund the creation of a long-term housing plan. Now, this is a combination of experienced leadership. And again, I think the addition of Dr. White to the city's leadership in this area is going to be very important. And in-depth research to help better understand whether these tools are effective, how we need to change those tools, how to make them better tools, and working with the Barnes Fund to direct future investment based on complete data. Now, to pivot onto your second question, how can we use city property to create more affordable housing? Now, this is a priority for me and my new director of public property, Trail Webb. And we're trying to be creative about using Metro's property to build on the city's future. Now, getting good real estate planning across the Metro department so that we know what land we can make available for affordable housing ends up being important. Now, public-private partnerships are important, and Council Member Toombs, we're working with on an RFP to build affordable housing on about 3 acres of publicly owned property located on 24th Avenue North. And that's a process that's being driven by community input. It's one example, but I predict that in the coming weeks, there will be other exciting announcements of Metro using public land to create affordable housing.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one clarification for my own purposes. Did you say that you would be willing to bring together those appropriate people to respond to those 2 questions? I may have missed it.
You mean to reassemble that? Yes. No, you are not off the hook. Everybody.
Okay.
You are not off the hook. Nobody's going away. This problem is going to take a lot of hard work by everybody to make improvements.
Thank you so much. It's a continuing process. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Steve Vennick, and I'm a member of NOAA's Affordable Housing Task Force, as well as NOAA's Young Adult Caucus. We're very grateful to have Councilmember Sandra Sepulveda joining us today, and for being a great partner to NOAA in our social justice work. Nashville is seeing an unprecedented infusion of $260 million of federal money into our city, thanks to President Biden's American Rescue Plan, which was passed by Congress this past spring. We are unlikely to see this large of a federal investment in Nashville again anytime soon. Nashville is losing hundreds of units per year that were once affordable, which creates housing instability and stress for families, workers, and our older residents. I have seen this firsthand in my day job as a disaster case manager, when it has far too often been impossible to find affordable housing in Nashville proper for displaced March 2020 tornado and March 2021 flood survivors. With these one-time American Rescue Plan funds, we have a chance to follow the lead of our peer cities and make significant investments in preserving rental properties that have been affordable in the past. We just heard about the Catalyst Fund that Mayor Cooper mentioned. Many of these are in danger of purchase by outside investors who will raise the rents or tear them down and build more expensive housing. We've seen this recently with the development in the East area that's been that was a mobile home and is now in danger of being converted to market rate housing. Councilmember Sepulveda serves on the COVID-19 Financial Oversight Committee, which makes recommendations to Metro Council about the use of these American Rescue Plan funds. So my question to you, Councilmember Sepulveda, will you advocate within the Financial Oversight Committee and on Metro Council to use American Rescue Plan funds to purchase properties that are at risk of going market rate? You have 3 minutes to respond. Thank you.
Yes, is the simple answer. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to participate in this and for all the work you do. So absolutely. Very early on, one of the things that we kept hearing from people in our community is that we need affordable housing. And that has been one of the top things that many council members and people in different organizations like NOAA constantly hear. So being a member of the ARP committee, which is we have guiding principles that are drafted currently. And this is just a draft in which we are allocating potentially between 20 and 25 million for affordable housing for MDHA, Catalyst, and the Barnes Fund. And so that's currently in our drafts. We on the committee have pushed for input from the community, some type of platform on
I think we've had a technical difficulty there. She's lost her Zoom.
Well, I think we heard some great things from Councilmember Sepulveda while she was able to share them with us. Sounds like they're moving forward, and we'll be sure to follow up with her. She's been a great partner to NOAA in our work.
Thank you. Insufficient funding and loss of properties for various reasons are only a part of the dilemma that many of our citizens are facing. Despite rescue and support efforts from different sources, one major threat still challenges some of our neighbors. Judge Rachel Bell will now address us to talk about what she sees as the problems with the way evictions are handled in the courts in Davidson County. Judge Bell.
Thank you. And before I go into addressing any concerns or problems that I may see here in Davidson County, first I want to bring you greetings. I am a fourth-generation native Nashvillian. I do see my mom and my dad and my brother on the call right now, but I grew up in Bordeaux, North Nashville. And I would agree with Vonda McDaniel. I can't always be so excited to say that I'm a graduate of Metro Nashville Public Schools, graduating from Hillsborough High School. I was elected your youngest judge back in 2012, and I'm still your youngest judge serving in Davidson County. I serve with 10 other judges. I am the presiding judge over Division 8. And being the presiding judge over Division 8, we started the Music Community Court back in 2012. And our focus is to create initiatives focused on preventative, restorative, and diversionary justice centered around the concept that justice does not stop at the courthouse steps. Our vision is also to do all that we could and all that we can still to break the playground to prison pipeline, to restore and rehabilitate laws by using our power, our resources to move the needle for marginalized people. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that I also, along with my church, because I'm a member of New Covenant Christian Church, I'm a founding member through my church, New Covenant, as a founding member of NOAA. And so we've been boots on the ground since day one. But when I was serving as a lawyer, I was focused right before I became a judge on stopping foreclosure. I remember the crisis back in 2008. And now here we are dealing with an eviction crisis. And so the partnerships that we put together, and I thank Mayor Cooper for getting the funding that he acquired through the CARES Grant Fund and also the United States Treasury ERAP funds, and our partners with the United Way and the Financial Assistance Network, and then also with Metro Action Commission, who has been phenomenal in helping us with the United States Treasury ERAP funds. And then we have partners with other nonprofits here in the city of Nashville. One thing you asked me, what were the issues that I'm seeing now with dealing with the city's eviction crisis? I will say, and I got to give credit to my colleagues, the other 10 judges that serve with me. When I was asked by the mayor's senior advisor, could we take the program that we created which is Legacy, the Housing Resource Diversionary Court, and open it up not just for MDHA, which is our initial partnership, but for the city of Nashville as a whole, for our private citizens and also our private landlords, we said yes. We know all too well the issues that are going on in the city of Nashville with landlords and also going on with tenants. And so the Legacy Housing Resource Diversionary Court was developed to assist landlords and tenants with a streamlined way to navigate the current pandemic, particularly those whose income was affected directly by COVID-19, resulting in the inability to receive or pay rent. So to get into your question, what issues have I seen? Well, as we were going towards getting everything resolved and trying to get the process together, there were times we couldn't get the landlord to agree to transfer the case to the Legacy Housing Resource Diversionary Court. And sometimes the tenants were leery and not even showing up to court. And so there were default judgments that were being rendered, because if a tenant is not advocating for themselves and coming through the court process, then it really does tie the judge's hands to move a case to the Legacy Housing Resource Diversionary Court, and the tenant's not even there trying to keep the roof over their head. We were able to but come up with a couple of orders. First, we ordered all the cases to come to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court. And I also would give credit to our civil court clerk, Richard Rooker, for helping us create additional dockets throughout the court. And then our criminal court for allowing me to close some of my criminal dockets so I could open up the civil dockets. But the major issue is when tenants don't show up to court. The other issue was when the landlord or landlord's attorney didn't want to transfer the case to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court. We decided as a team, me and my colleagues, to go on and issue an order that any case that has a Metro Action Commission application will automatically be transferred to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court. And that gives us a chance to have an initial appearance and then also have a settlement docket so that we can work with our housing court navigators to get them to payment. When there are times that a landlord doesn't agree, we do set it for trial. And the other issue that we're seeing, and I'll leave us with this, is when the landlord doesn't agree, the landlord doesn't want the funds and just wants their property back, then we have to find the tenant somewhere to live. And because Nashville has an affordable housing crisis, sometimes it does take us more time than we really have to try to find somewhere for this tenant to live. So I'm able to continue the case for not an indefinite time, for about 30 to 45 days, to assist the tenant in finding housing. And so now with the United States Treasury funds, we're able to pay the tenant, then the tenant writes a check to the landlord in open court. So the landlord is still being compensated. But the two issues are when the landlord and tenant don't participate and want to come to court. The second issue is when the landlord wants their property back and we're trying to find somewhere for the tenant to stay. But I will say that with the partnership with MAC, we have been able to settle more than 2,000 cases. We spent over $6 million just with the housing court. MAC themselves have spent more than $21.9 million and are moving towards another bucket of funds. But to answer your question, those are the two problems. When the tenant doesn't participate and when the landlord doesn't want to work with the process and the program that we've put in place.
You're on mute, Paulette.
Thank you, Judge Bell. NOAA understands that our criminal justice system is interconnected with issues of housing. The COVID financial downturn is causing a complicated eviction crisis that has many related parts, some of which you've outlined, with government and nonprofit agencies struggling to make their part of this puzzle work well. Judge Rachel Bell created a housing court, but needs more resources to handle the specific needs of eviction cases. A special public hearing of the Metro Human Relations Commission identified bottlenecks in the court clerk's processes, including the case link computer system. Special federal funds are available to help tenants, but no structure existed to efficiently get this money to tenants and landlords. And as we heard from the judge, sometimes the tenants and the landlords don't show. The Metro Action Commission has expanded the staff and worked with volunteer groups to connect these funds with tenants and landlords needing relief. However, the process still sometimes takes months. Someone needs to look at all of the pieces of this puzzle and find ways to improve the technology and processes and more participation from tenants and landlords so that people are getting the help they need to stay in their own homes. And as the judge pointed out so rightly, we need to have more available housing to have places for them to go. So many of our neighbors are not surviving, much less thriving. Our vision is a city where housing stability is a reality, enabling people to survive and thrive. So this is the question for you, Mayor Cooper. Will you meet with Judge Rachel Bell, NOAA, and others involved in this emergency assistance system to identify the resources and improvements that are needed to more quickly help those facing evictions? That is the question. You have 3 minutes to respond, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Paulette. I just want everybody in this Zoom to know what a rock star Judge Bell has been for the city on this front, and I deeply admire her leadership. And let's just say how well Nashville is doing in helping neighbors avoid eviction. We're recognized as one of the top performing cities in the country in getting federal eviction relief assistance dollars out. Now, let me also thank Dr. Cynthia Kroom and her team at the Metro Action Commission for this work. Let's just go through some amazing numbers, because so far, because of Mac's work, Nashville has served more than 3,000 people. And our initial federal allotment of $20.8 million was completely paid out to neighbors in need back in August. And then Mac is more than 75% on the way of getting out our second allotment of $9.1 million out. And because we performed so well, we've received a third allotment of $13 million. Those funds came in just this week. So we're also waiting on another $24 million to be reallocated from the state to MAC. We're better at getting money out here locally, I think, than the state is. That's just a fact. And we're going to get those dollars out too. And now MAC has 3 employees. They're called Hope Court Navigators, who work in Judge Bell's court. So the status of each case and the payment amount made to help tenants are reported to the judge and the landlord's attorneys, with our navigators right there in Judge Bell's court. They help people complete the application for eviction relief assistance right there. So we are at one time hearing from landlords who thought they'd not been paid, but are discovering that they had simply missed the most recent bank statement. All told, Judge Bell's and the city's diligence is getting results. And MAC has been in the community and helping people fill out the applications and upload documents. There's a lot of work to be done with each applicant. But again, that's a big number, helping 3,000 people with lots more money on the way. The work continues. And I'm hopeful that in time we'll be able to get another $40 million out to help people that need it. But again, if nothing else on this call, I just want to publicly thank Judge Bell and her efforts and the Metro Action Commission for their really great work in this area in Nashville.
Thank you so much, Mayor Cooper. I know there are many more people than 3,000 who need the assistance, and so we still have work to do. And do we know what the number of people are that need assistance and that are waiting, either Judge Bell or the mayor?
Well, I would defer to Judge Bell's view on that. It's hard to count.
Exactly.
It's hard to count, and the need is great, but I am excited that the pipeline of money to help address the need is going up, in part because of our proven ability to use the money.
Okay, thank you. We all want to work further, and so I think I heard you say that you will be willing to meet with those or to convene those that want to do this work, because it is enormous, it is ongoing, and thank you all. We will next hear from Joe Engel.
Thrive. That includes public safety.
Joe, you need to unmute yourself.
I did.
Can you start again, Joe, please? I don't
Sure.
think...
As previously mentioned, the issues NOAA task forces lead on are interconnected in creating a city where all of its citizens can thrive. That includes public safety.
think that the Metro Nashville Police Department is starting to take a lot of really good steps toward making sure that they are aligning a healthcare response with a healthcare need. And they are partnering with organizations like the Mental Health Cooperative and the Partners in Care program to do this new co-response model, which is a very exciting step for the city since we haven't seen anything like that to help deflect people with mental health issues from going to jail or from having encounters that don't end well for anybody. So I know the police are excited to get more help from the mental health professionals, and there's other opportunities as well, such as with the program that we've been partnering with NOAA to help advocate for, which is Nashville Heals, Health Engagement and Liaison Services, where we send out a mental health crisis worker and a medic in a van that's got all sorts of great equipment and folks who are really well trained instead of law enforcement when it's safe to do so. And these folks can really help in a different way, and it's great for everybody, and law enforcement can focus on public safety while the health professionals can do their job and get people where they need to go. We want to make sure that people get what they need. If they have a healthcare issue, we want to make sure that they have a healthcare response whenever possible. That's what's in the best interest of everybody. So we're moving in a really positive direction. I know that we've got a conference coming up soon, and a lot of people, there's a whole team of people in Nashville, from city officials to police to NOAA, Behavioral Health Foundation, and others that are working on this and putting plans together. So I feel very good about the path that we're on right now.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah, I've lost my script. We appreciate the hopeful nature that Elliott has for this program, and we want to reiterate the serious nature of the intervention needed. The Criminal Justice Task Force has been working on ways to train and engage with public safety that is less punitive and more restorative. We are excited to announce that members from the Department of Emergency Communications, Metro Police, Mayor's Office, and the Mental Health Co-op went to a joint training on this subject. These participants will complete Taking the Call, which is a U.S. Department of Justice conference online from October the 20th through the 21st. Mayor Cooper, will you agree to meet with those that attend to learn how Nashville could enhance its first responder efforts to emergency mental health crisis calls?
Yes, I'm going to be excited to meet with several of the Metro agencies are going to be on that call, as you were mentioning. Metro Police, Social Services, the E911 Center. Dia Cirillo in my office is also telling me that Attorney General Merrick Garland is going to be in the conference as well. And I am very proud to report that since last we met, our Nashville Partners in Care model has moved further forward. We've engaged a stakeholder council, and invitations to that group are going out this week, including one to NOAA. And that council we hope to meet in early November. And we're recruiting an epidemiologist to monitor the progress of this work. And we funded a third-party evaluation of the pilot to make sure that we're improving our efforts and our tools. The early results in Partners in Care are very promising. Now, the model is tailored for Nashville, where 70% of the co-response calls we receive are high acuity cases. Now, that's people experiencing mental health crisis, for example, or domestic violence. And this pilot is helping us ensure that we need to follow through with people in need and to connect them with the right care that they need, hopefully at the right time. So we have some data of the 570 incidents to which our crisis intervention team has so far responded under this pilot. Only 21 of this 570, that's less than 4%, has led to an arrest. And of 97 potential arrests, 78% are now diverted to care. So 97 incidents were identified as cases where someone could have been charged, but only 21 were charged. And the use of force is extremely low in these 570 incidences. That's down to 8 incidences, or less than 2%, 1.4%. So in terms of delivering improvement in this important area, we want to listen to the professionals, to third-party evaluation, to an epidemiologist to evaluate all the results. But again, so far, I wanted to share this preliminary results from the pilot program of Partners in Care going forward. But hearing back and learning what we can from the Attorney General's office on this is, of course, very important for us and for the city.
Well, thank you, and we'll look forward to meeting with you.
So moving from criminal justice back towards the issue of stable and affordable housing. The idea that departments within our government should work together is nothing new, and yet it's something that must be intentional in order for it to be effective. Metro employees working on housing should be aligned in their work, and the best way to do that is by establishing a department focused solely on affordable housing. Mayor Cooper, we applaud you and thank you for following through on your campaign commitment from your 2019 policy platform document to, quote, bring real expertise to housing policy, close quote, by including funding for 2 new housing staff, which you mentioned, including a director of housing and the data analyst that you mentioned in this year's budget, as well as the $500,000 for the long-term plan. These 2 new positions are currently set to be housed within the Metro Planning Department. And there are presently 2 other staff members in your office who are also working on housing issues. Mayor Cooper, will you agree to take the next step to build on the success that you've already achieved by consolidating these staff members into one department and ensure that this is implemented by July 1st, 2022? You have 2 minutes to respond because we're running a little over time.
I'll be quick. Thank you, Steve. I'll do you one better. I'm committed to consolidating staff members on the Director of Housing's first day on the job. Because with Dr. White, we're trying to get all our housing specialists to row in the same direction and improve effectiveness. Coordinated housing system has got to be there to bring value to residents. Now, I want to highlight that I'm also recommending an additional allocation of $200,000 to invest in a state-of-the-art centralized housing navigation system so that every subsidized unit in Davidson County will be located, the ability to access it on one platform with up-to-date availability and a centralized application for every property. I know NOAA has worked hard on this concern that there's kind of a time tax on lower income populations. So we're going to use technology where we can streamline our resources for neighbors that need help and get them help more quickly. Now, with operating funding for a long-term housing plan and 2 new positions for the planning department devoted to affordable housing, we will have an affordable housing division within planning and have an affordable housing inventory assessment with every rezoning and neighborhood planning, making housing central to all of our future development requests in the city. And that's how we're going to make it central. We're going to use this big pipeline of development that's happening in Nashville and put housing right in the middle of that pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Cooper. So just to clarify, will those staff members currently working on housing in your office, I'm thinking about Mrs. Davis and the Barnes Fund, will they be consolidated into this new department within planning?
Yes, yeah, and to have a robust, coordinated effort that has a lot of tools and frankly, a lot of power.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Mayor Cooper, that dovetails into the question that I'm about to ask you very well. I see the city changing rapidly, and I want to make sure that it is a thriving city for working families. As the city welcomes new companies like Amazon and Oracle and the massive East Bank project, we know that jobs can be a way to thrive if they're done right. The United Way recently released their Alice report, and it outlines that the minimum amount of hourly wages needed to survive versus thrive in Metro Nashville. This report, along with the Do Better bill that was passed by Metro Council, really gives us a blueprint for more successful growth in our city. Mayor Cooper, will you ask the Department of Procurement to work with us to adapt the request for proposal language on all future projects to include some standards for livable wages and workplace training and safety? This would be similar to the standards in the Do Better bill.
Yeah, and Vonda, I'm going to need your help to navigate how to be effective in this area. Let's spend a moment on that. First, a shout out to our city. We're the 6th best in jobs in our MSA and the whole country, and unemployment now is 3.5%. So we're getting jobs. We need good jobs, and we need to give them out to all of our folks. And we want to improve wages and workplace safety conditions. However, as you know, this is challenging from the state legislation perspective because they have preempted our ability to address these issues kind of directly. In the aftermath of the Do Better bill, which Metro Council then adopted the Get It Right bill, that was designed to improve workplace conditions and procurement requirements. But even before the council could consider that ordinance on third reading, the General Assembly enacted SB 1150, preempting all the material provisions in the ordinance. And that state law remains in effect, and it prohibits local government from requiring contractors or subcontractors. It's worth for this audience to hear this. I mean, you and I live with this every day, but prohibits contractors to adhere to safety and health standards that exceed what is required by OSHA. You can't, it's capped and down. And also with wages, Tennessee Code Annotated 52-112, no local government has the authority to require private employers pay hourly wages that exceed the minimum wage required under federal state law. Now, as Metro, we are doing that, but it's very hard to push the private sector into doing that. We just have to show leadership by example. And that, I think, gives a sense of what we're going to work every day to try to improve for the lives of our people. But some days it seems harder than it should be.
Absolutely, Mayor Cooper, and I appreciate your response. We will continue to work to find ways to make sure that the jobs that are coming to Nashville help all Nashvillians to not just survive, but thrive.
Yes.
Vonda, I believe there's one more question here. Do you have that? Would you like me to jump in? That's okay. And you muted yourself too.
I'm sorry, I've lost my script as well. Joe, we're together in that.
Okay, I can jump in. I'm happy to ask the mayor this one. Mayors, there are cities in the US such as Denver that are leading the way on public transparency. They have dashboards posted on websites that track where the public money is going, how much, and to which developer or organization, and even in which part of the city that money is being spent. We believe that Nashville needs that same level of transparency with so much growth and development happening here. So our question is, will you direct your staff, particularly staff within the Economic Development Department, to develop an online public dashboard so we as citizens are fully aware of where our county chooses to spend our tax dollars?
Well, yes, thank you for that question. And yes, my Office of Performance Management, and I actually created this when I became mayor, has developed, it's called the Service Level and Cost Monitoring Dashboard. And you can find that at nashville.gov. Now, these dashboards are very important because they allow everybody to view how the city performs on standard services, as well as the cost of a variety of these services, like what it costs to pick up trash, fill potholes, build sidewalks, run our parks. Now, one of my first actions as mayor was to create this Office of Performance Management, and OPM tracks 250 metrics that measure service levels, operating performance, cost monitoring, and management. So we're trying to show Nashville taxpayers what they're getting for their investment. We've asked for more investment from them, but we need to show what they're getting for that investment. And so we want to build trust and justify future investments by being transparent. And the city has never put greater focus on this transparency and accountability. I also want to say on that is my administration's commitment tracker. I made 51 commitments when I ran for mayor. And we issue periodically an updated progress report. We haven't gotten them all done, but we're making a lot of progress. But now, so far since I've been mayor, we have not engaged in the type of incentives to private companies that used to be so common in Nashville. We have not awarded job grants out of our operating budget. We have not included participation agreements for private developments. We're trying to do this for affordable housing, but not for private developments. These have not been in our capital spending plans, and we have not issued debt in the form of TIF loans. Now, there was one big economic development agreement that we have done. That was Oracle. But in that case, Oracle is making a $175 million investment in public infrastructure. That's a riverfront park, a pump station, a pedestrian bridge, street widenings, utility improvements, things that a city would ordinarily be buying for itself. But per the economic plan with Oracle, half of their future property tax is going to go to reimbursing the company for building public infrastructure that's going to be available to the public without any interest payments. And the remaining half of the property tax is going to come back to the city with a priority on funding things like affordable housing. Now, we hired Courtney Pogue to be our new economic development officer. He is putting together right now an economic development plan for us, for Nashville. It is not the chamber's plan, it is our plan, trying to help all of our communities. So as a priority in that plan would be, what are we going to do to help employ hard to employ people? How are we going to bring economic development and prosperity to communities, not which companies have asked for our help, is how do we actually serve the community this. He was the economic development officer in Dallas, Texas, but before that in Chicago and Atlanta, where he worked in particular using our HBCUs. He did it in Atlanta. We hope to do it here as a platform for opportunity for economic development and serving the whole community. But again, back to your question, I'm expecting a high level of transparency for taxpayer money, and particularly for taxpayer money involved in economic development. So thank you, Mark, for that question.
No, you're welcome. So just
it's the heart and soul of what we're trying to get done down here.
It really is. And so a quick follow-up, we believe that there is transparency that your office has done, but we also believe that there's room for growth. And so we'd like a commitment from you to work with us and other nonprofits in town.
No, and I'd love it if you'd go look at our dashboard and tell us how to improve it.
Yes. Okay, good. Then we are happy to work with that and to work with Courtney on that as well. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mayor Cooper. I know we never have enough time in person or online to do as much as we would like to do. This work is important, and we believe it will continue to move forward. Each of our task forces today have painted a vision of what a thriving Nashville could look like for all of us, not just a survival Nashville. But it takes focus, it takes engagement, and it takes intention by us as citizens. And one of the easiest ways to get engaged is to vote. Simply one of the easiest. NOAA has an integrated voter engagement team that's focused on this work, and we have a brief video we'd like to share with you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bryna Oleshansky. I want to thank you for your attendance in this important demonstration of civic involvement. And as a member of the steering committee of the Integrated Voter Engagement Working Group, IVE for short, I would like to take a few minutes to talk about some key initiatives that we have begun. The role of IVE, simply stated, is to engage, educate, and mobilize non-voters, sometimes voters, and always voters alike. Due to this, there has to be a strong infrastructure, and to help achieve this, IVE has launched a core team initiative. What are core teams, you may ask? Think of core teams as the powerhouses within your organizations, groups of interested and impassioned people who want to work alongside NOAA's great social actions and be part of the change, making Nashville thrive for everyone. So imagine your organization's leadership group or core team meeting monthly and sharing information and actions with your members, creating an in-house system of information sharing. Then imagine other organizations near you that are part of your pod. They connect and support your team. Each of these pods would have a core team coordinator to offer training, insights, and problem-solving tips. The idea is that communication flows both ways, effortlessly and across Nashville, using small groups of people to make the changes that are needed. But why does this matter? Core teams are our collective path to power, to make real change in the city by building on the organizational power that is already represented in NOAA. Imagine if we have representatives from so many congregations and organizations involved in NOAA that are here today, watching this meeting. What would happen if we could mobilize half or even 3/4 of the individuals involved in all of these NOAA member organizations? What could these numbers do for our demands for criminal justice, for affordable housing, for children's needs in our schools? Helping to build core teams will be a big part of our efforts to build more capacity and activism as we begin to plan and execute actions for the coming year, which will include conducting listening campaigns in a mix of Nashville neighborhoods to engage those communities in conversations about what is important to them and how they see themselves thriving in Nashville. It will also allow us to better assess if NOAA is focused on the issues that are most important to the citizens of Nashville, as well as allow us to gather contact information so we can keep folks informed about upcoming elections and aid in voter registration. NOAA will be hosting candidate forums for judgeships and school board member races in some districts, and we look forward to having all of you engaged in those conversations. In closing, I'd like to ask that if you have a desire to help mobilize community voices and votes, to work to remove barriers to voting, as well as help register voters, and to engage communities on how to hold public officials accountable, that you learn more by becoming a member of our NOAA and join the IVE working group. Thanks so much.
As you all have just heard, and as we have said throughout today, organized money and organized people is how we bring about the changes that we want today. We again want to thank Mayor Cooper, Judge Bell, Chairwoman Buggs, Councilwoman Sepulveda, and Councilwoman Berkeley Allen, who joined us, Judges Escobar Bonnyman, and School Board Member Abigail Tyler. Special thanks also to Kim Lanier and Eric Dorman, who created the videos throughout the session. And last of all, we want to thank each of you, concerned citizens of Nashville, who have joined us on this beautiful fall day virtually to meet and to get engaged. We look forward to contributions that we each can make to make Nashville thrive. But it really is about all of us joining together. If you would like more information about joining one of our task forces or coming to our meetings, you can find out about that at info@noaatn.org. Thank you for staying a little bit over time. We try to keep a very tight time schedule. We will close today with a closing prayer by Reverend Don Bennett, who's pastor at the table.
Thank you. Let us pray. Let us not be silent in our communities, and let us not be silent in our prayers. Abba God, you know the struggle that is in so many hearts and homes right now, pain that for many has been present for quite some time. Holy Spirit, hear us as we pray. God, our comforter, like lost sheep, we have gone astray sometimes. We gaze upon abundance and we see scarcity. We turn our faces away from injustice and oppression. We exploit the earth with our apathy and our greed. Free us from our selfish ways, gracious God, and listen to us when we call out to you for help. Lead us by your love to love our neighbors as ourselves. Empowering God, you offer compassion for those who are overlooked or forgotten. Open the hearts of local and state leaders to show such compassion and love for their neighbors. God, in your mercy, hear us as we pray. Sheltering God, at one time you traveled among us without a place to lay your head, so you know the struggle of our most vulnerable citizens. Provide safe places to sleep and rest for those who have no place to live. Sustain ministries and organizations that offer food and clothing and peace of mind. God, in your mercy, hear us as we pray. Renewing God, you bring life out of death. Help us part with those things that are no longer beneficial to us and open our hearts to see where new life is budding in our city as we seek out opportunities for Nashvillians to thrive, not just survive. Help us to work collectively toward affordable housing, criminal justice, economic equity and jobs, and education. God, in your mercy, hear us as we lift our prayers and our petitions to you. Amen.
Thanks again, everyone. And again, noatn.org. We appreciate those coming today. We look forward to working with you.